to Nuked Radio. This is episode 23. Today is Tuesday, April 17th. With me today is Jules. And Jules has a show on Monday night called WTF from 10 to 12. And if you guys haven't checked it out, I was on there last night. It's a lot of fun. We talk about all these crazy news stories, but we make fun of them a lot. And it's really a great time. Thanks for having me on there last night, Jules. It was really fun.
Anytime, Christina. Actually, I hope you'll be on more. And, you know, it definitely helps just kind of deal with the bad news by being able to laugh at it, I find.
It does. The comic relief is a good thing. In the last 5 days since we were on air, there has been quite a bit of news that we wanted to go over today. And we extended an invitation to Senator Wyden from Oregon, who came out with a press release yesterday that we are going to talk about a little later on in the show, and what we can do to spread this press release far and wide. Back to last week, on Friday, I put out a forecast, and a couple of the warning areas, one was Manitoba, where they were having some heavy rain, and also west coast of California, they had some really intense thunderstorms, which I guess isn't usual for California. They're not used to having a lot of thunder and lightning.
Or tornadoes.
And, yeah, and I got a couple emails that afternoon, one from a lady in Manitoba saying that her teenage daughter had got caught in the rain and she had like a sunburn on her skin, and also an email from a woman in California saying that she had gone to an association meeting for her condos. They were meeting at a restaurant, and even though it had been raining all day, everybody there looked like they had sunburn. And I wanted to read what actually causes that. Beta burns are shallow surface burns, usually the skin and less often of lungs or the gastrointestinal tract, caused by beta particles, typically from hot particles or dissolved radionuclides that came to direct contact with or close proximity to the body. They can appear similar to a sunburn. Unlike gamma rays, beta emissions are stopped much more effectively by materials and therefore deposit all their energy in only a shallow layer of tissue, causing more intense but more localized damage. On a cellular level, the changes in skin are similar to radiodermatitis. High doses of radiation can also cause rapid browning of the skin, known as a nuclear tan. So it was a little concerning to get those emails, and I also sent to them decontamination, showering with baking soda, and told them it's a good opportunity to maybe talk to some other people, especially the woman in Manitoba, talk to her daughter's teachers at school about it too, so we can get the word throughout the schools. Just in the last week, page, we've reached 30,000 people, which was double what it was the week before. And Jules and I were talking about this. We seem to really be riding a wave right now of publicity because of the earthquake uptick and because of some of the warnings that have been posted about the spent fuel pool, and now the Senator Wyden thing. And we really need to take advantage of this, because this, while people are paying attention, is the best time to get the news out, and who knows if we'll get another chance to really do that if and when something ever happens to that spent fuel pool. Jules had mentioned over the weekend on Any News, all of a sudden they're posting that today they were going to start working on putting a cover over the spent fuel pool number 4, and they were also going to do something to shore up the building starting today. Now, why all of a sudden they're wanting to do this when they haven't done anything about it in the past 13 months? Could it be because of this wave of news that's been coming out about how, what a concern this situation is? Or is it because of the earthquake uptick? In fact, last night we had a 7.0 in Papua New Guinea, and Chile, not sure how you say that, had a 5.1. People have been warning that was one of the only places that hadn't got hit in the last week. Jules also brought my attention to a researcher, and let me bring up the article here, who has been warning about the Sumatra earthquake setting off a chain reaction And this guy is a Croatian researcher, but I checked him out, and he is legit. The shocking number of earthquakes that have rattled the globe, and this is from the Extinction Protocol, especially along tectonic plate boundaries, since the double 8.0 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of northern Sumatra on April 11th, could be an early indication the planet may be shifting towards a new catastrophic model. Romania's top seismologist, George Marmareanu, told the Bucharest Herald, "There is no doubt something is seriously wrong. There have been too many strong earthquakes. If you keep seismically shaking the earth like a bottle of soda, its structural integrity eventually will become compromised and it will start to fracture like an egg. In this case, the fracturing will be thermal dissipation by hypervolcanism, megathrust earthquakes, and greater tectonic boundary plate agitation around volcanic areas and subduction zones. If this is what's indeed happening, the pressure will continue to build in the interior of the planet until it eventually destabilizes all the tectonic plates." When you think about the Earth as a sphere, these plates are flatter. If you took a soccer ball and you put dinner plates around it, it's going to have areas where those plates overlap or bump into each other, and that's kind of what happens at the faults, although it's a exaggerated example. But I saw that this had been posted, and this guy, I thought, it's Croatia, I don't know. But I checked him out. He is legit. So people who live in earthquake-prone areas should really take that seriously and make sure that they have bug-out plans or a supply of water, pet food, non-perishable food items, and keeping your cell phones and laptops charged is also a good idea, so you can stay in touch and let people know that you're okay after an earthquake happens, because usually there is an interruption in communications, especially if it hits in a really populated area. And we had some earthquakes too this weekend that Jules and I had talked about in a non-populated area, in fact a very rural part of Canada, the Northwest Territories, which is way, way up there over Quebec and Ontario. And a few of these earthquakes were posted on the UCSD site over the weekend, and I saw them, and I saw a screenshot of them, and then I went to look at them, and they had taken 3 down, and then when I went to show someone else, they had taken all of them down. Now, this is a rural part of northern Canada, and it's around an area called the Great Slave Lake. There were also earthquakes reported this weekend in Alberta and Newfoundland. But this Great Slave Lake sits at the bottom of what looks to be a huge caldera. It's a very old volcanic area. And coincidentally, on January 3rd of 1978, Soviet radar ocean recon satellite named Cosmos 954, which had been built with an onboard nuclear reactor, fell from orbit, and pieces of the nuclear core fell in the vicinity of this lake. 90% of the debris was eventually recovered. The Americans and Canadians put together a recon team. That had to be an interesting, I wonder how they did that, collecting all this nuclear material from this lake. There's a lot of diamond and gold mines up there, and of course that's in areas where there's dormant volcanoes. And this area is also part of something called the Canadian Shield, which is a huge outcropping of rock that lays on top of the Craton, which, as you know, extends down into North America and into the Midwest, and it's where we've had the site of numerous earthquakes in the last couple weeks as well. And we will be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Nuked Radio.
You should learn when to go. You should learn how to say no.
And we are back. One of the places that has not been shaking is Japan, which is kind of interesting. It's normal for them to have little earthquakes there all the time, but they have been noticeably quiet, which sometimes means pressure is building. On any news today, government admits for first time all nuclear reactors will be shut down in Japan, 45 years since no plants were operating in the country. This is going to start in May. and they're leaving it kind of open-ended. They are meeting with a lot of disgruntled locals in the area of Fukai Prefecture, where they're trying to restart a couple of reactors. And we've talked about this on and off in the show. We've posted some meetings that became very heated. People are definitely taking notice of the situation. And, you know, they lived without a lot of this power over last summer when they had to shut things down. And they did have some rolling blackouts in Tokyo, but I think the people at this point want to live with that instead of live with the threat of further meltdowns. There's a book that just came out, too, where a worker on the Fukushima site said that reactor number 4 deformed in front of our eyes. Walls morphed like special effects from a movie. There was no large explosion, yet the building was destroyed. And the German guy who always watches the TEPCO cameras on YouTube and posts videos of like strange lights and so forth, he received a video from someone in Japan that was delivering these huge hydraulic pumps to TEPCO, and I don't know if those are going to be somehow used to either use the cooling pool to do something with the cooling pool circulation, or if those are going to be used to shore up the building somehow. They haven't really said exactly how they're going to do this, but I always wondered why they didn't just build a concrete wall around Reactor 4 and fill that with concrete and boron and sand. So if the fuel pool fell, it would fall into something that could then be contained. It did say that they have put some bags of rocks up to guard against a further tsunami.
Yeah, I like that, bags of rocks.
The other thing that is what bothered me endlessly is since TEPCO released the footage of the number 3 spent fuel pool, all of a sudden there's a 35-ton machine in it. And last July, when they released the first video of the spent fuel pool of number 3, they didn't say anything about this machine. Now all of a sudden there's a 35-ton machine in there. And there's still some debate of whether or not that fuel pool even exists because of the recent flyover of number 3. The floor that it should be on is gone unless that fuel pool sits lower in the structure. Now, I also wanted to mention Alaska's number 2 newspaper published an article over the weekend. Spring brings fallout. Cesium-137 believed to cause malevolent genetic mutation, says reprinted editorial. Spring is upon us, but we will have to face more than the return of the birds and the happy loss of the snow. For in this nuclear age, the spring fallout from last year's Russian nuclear test is beginning to show up. This was published in April 12th of 1962 and reprinted. Fallout. The radioactive debris of nuclear explosions settles on all parts of the Earth's surface. This we can apparently do little about, and for that matter, little is known about the effects of fallout radiation on the human body. Again, this is from 1962. When we had Lauren Murray on, she had gone back to health records from 1898 and established a large increase in diabetes and other radiation-related illnesses that show up for the first time in people corresponding to the rainy seasons in spring. Because there's more rain, it's bringing more fallout. And this uptick was observed starting in the 1940s, and it's gradually increased. And what did we start doing in that time? We started building nuke plants. As we said before, the heaviest concentrations of fallout are found between the 30 and 50 degrees north latitude, a zone that includes virtually all of the continental United States. But before we become unduly alarmed, it should be pointed out that the Public Health Service feels there will be no need for special protective measures to reduce human intake of radioactive strontium-90, which may cause bone cancer or leukemia, and cesium-137, which is believed to cause malevolent genetic mutations. Interesting that they published this article from 1962. There was nothing mentioned about Fukushima, but they, I guess, want you to connect the dots. Jules had also, back to the earth changes, brought to my attention underground water in eastern Shasta County mysteriously disappears. Some believe the quakes are causing lowered levels. And this is, did you say this was Northern California?
Yes, it was Northern California.
Stephen Wolf is the gentleman that's interviewed for this article. He's a former USGS worker who has a theory about why wells are running dry in eastern Shasta County. Stephen Wolf thinks something strange is happening underground in eastern Shasta County, and it is draining water wells and maybe even causing sinkholes and subsiding pavement. A retired marine geologist with the USGS said he has seen what is happening in eastern Shasta County before, after the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Water well levels in the area of the quake fell significantly. Following the 6.9 magnitude quake in the Santa Cruz Mountains, Wolf wrote a paper for the USGS about the effects the quake had on surface and groundwater. The correlation is there. The behavior is identical, said Wolf, who has lived in the tiny eastern Shasta County community of Castle since 2001. Back in October, 131 earthquakes hit the Lassen Peak area. Most were less than 2.0 in magnitude, but since then the water table has fallen significantly. Peter Amos said his pump has been submerged 40 feet the entire 24 years he has lived in Castle, but a couple months ago he ran out of water. When the pump company measured his water level, it had fallen to 54 feet. We've never had a water problem before. We never thought about the water table going down. Terry Briggs, who owns Gallagher Pump in Falls River Mills, said what is going on in Castle is unusual. He said the drop in the water table in eastern Shasta County is the most dramatic he's seen in the past 10 to 15 years. It always moves up and down a little bit, but this was way more. Since January, he's had to help homeowners whose water tables have dropped below their pumps. But your water levels dropping has a lot to do with population and irrigation. In fact, Mexico City, which is one of the most densely populated cities on the planet, has been sinking for a few years because they've taken all the water out of the ground underneath the city. Wolf said the seismic activity further fractures the rocky volcanic soil, allowing the water to flow deeper into the earth. So another place that they are talking about earthquakes today is in Salt Lake City. FEMA is running their Great Shakeout drill. In fact, we're going to play the FEMA announcement for that drill when we come back. You're listening to Nuked Radio.
It's a cold winter day in Utah. Along the Wasatch Front, hundreds of thousands of people are busy at work. Many of them are commuting to jobs in different counties, far from where they live. 80% of the state's 2.7 million people live and work in the region. Today, these families and many others across the region will be separated. The largest earthquake to hit Utah in modern times has just begun. The rupture travels approximately 25 miles north along the Wasatch Fault. Some react appropriately, others don't. Over 10,000 buildings collapse. The shaking lasts for nearly a minute in some areas, damaging 285,000 buildings. Even in buildings that are not damaged, possessions fall down or are thrown across rooms. Infrastructure is destroyed. Utilities throughout Utah are disrupted. 2,300 people will die. 30,000 people will be injured. And $35 billion in building damages will occur. Finally, the shaking is over. A large number of people are trapped in collapsed buildings. Over 160 fires start, some turning into conflagrations. Hundreds of thousands of people are trying to use their phones, causing the system to become overloaded. In the months ahead, there will be tens of thousands of aftershocks. Residents will struggle to recover from the earthquake. There will be no water for weeks or months and no electricity. Traveling around town will be more difficult and time-consuming, and 350,000 people will be displaced from their homes. We are all in this together. We will all suffer the earthquake's consequences if most of us do nothing now. How quickly you will recover from this disaster is up to you and those around you. Your level of personal preparedness will determine your quality of life after the quake. Here are a few things you can do to prepare. It's a good idea to have a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, and at least a 3-day supply of water for each person in your household. Have an emergency plan and decide where you will meet up with your family after an earthquake. Make sure there is a person out of town you can contact to let your loved ones know that you're okay. When remodeling your older brick home, consult a professional engineer or the Utah Guide for the Seismic Improvement of Unreinforced Masonry Dwellings. Consider whether earthquake insurance makes sense for you as part of your financial plan. You should also secure furniture, your hot water heater, and heavy or valuable items so they won't fall. Preparedness is not only for the home, but also for business. Be sure that your company has emergency plans for a major earthquake. Empower yourself and your family. Be prepared. For more information, visit www.bereadyutah.gov.
So some strong words from FEMA.
Wow. You know, I find it interesting looking at this link that one of the sponsors for the Great Shakeout is Walmart. Did you see that? They hoping to sell tents and sleeping bags.
I sent that clip to my daughter who read it this morning, and she's like, thanks, Mom. That was a great way to start my day. She just bought a house right on the Wasatch Fault in Sandy.
Whoops.
And I've been telling her she's got 3 cats and a dog. Just make sure you have enough pet food, because knowing her, that'll be the thing that bothers her the most is not being able to feed the pets.
Yeah,
So
I have a couple 20-pounders, 20-pound bags.
For anyone who is just tuning in, that was just a drill. It's the realistic outcome of a hypothetical earthquake occurring in Salt Lake City. The last major earthquake there was 350 years ago. Now, they have little earthquakes all the time, a lot of them in the southern part of the state that's pretty much uninhabited. And University of Utah has a good seismic page if you live in that area and you want to keep track of that. But, you know, there's a whole basin next to those mountains, and they said an earthquake would just reverberate through that entire basin, and it's pretty densely populated. I was just out there last summer. It's a beautiful city. So hopefully nothing will happen there, but they will be practicing today. It was supposed to start at 10:15 this morning. Thanks, Kurt, for playing that. Kurt has a show that just started back up on yesterday. Jules, I don't recall what days his show is on. Is it Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
I believe, yes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And
From
Saturday.
8 to 10 in the morning, and Saturday 1 to 3. Is that right, Kurt?
That's correct.
Thanks for helping us out with that.
Not a problem.
2 other things that happened in the past few days. One of them happened to me, and I posted a video on YouTube yesterday of some interesting dandelions that I found. My boyfriend and I went to Belle Isle, which is an island. It's about 7 square miles. It sits in the middle of the Detroit River between the U.S. and Canadian border. And there's a bunch of stuff on this island, a lot of picnic areas and fishing, and there's an old casino there, and there's a conservatory that's actually the oldest conservatory in the United States. There used to be a great aquarium there, but they ran out of money to fund that. And we were walking over to the fishing area, and I happened to look down, and there's dandelions everywhere, because, of course, you know, Detroit doesn't have any money for Roundup or any of those weed control things. And the dandelions are out in full force, and we're walking, and I happen to look down, and instead of seeing a round dandelion, I see an oval one. And I'm like, hey, wait a second, let's look at this. And we start looking around, and it was on top of a hill, and we found 12 or 13 mutated dandelions in this 20 by 20 foot section of grass. And I would have thought that the way rain flows downhill, that you would see more signs of contamination or mutation in plants or vegetation in low-lying areas. But this was on top of a hill, and the only other thing that was different about this hill than the other areas around is this is where all the geese hang out, because it's right next to the fishing area. So I wanted to see what kind of correlation might have contributed to this one area being contaminated. And I found out Canadian geese are primarily herbivores, although they sometimes eat small insects and fish. Their diet includes green vegetation and grains. The Canadian goose eats a variety of grasses when on land. It feeds by grasping a blade of grass with the bill and tearing it. The Canadian goose also eats grains such as wheat, beans, rice, and corn when they are available in the water. It feeds from silt at the bottom of a body of water. It also feeds on aquatic plants such as seaweeds. In urban cities, they're also known to pick food out of garbage cans. And we know seaweed is a rad magnet, especially in light of the recent kelp findings off the southern coast of California, 40 million becquerels in sea kelp. I don't know what the seaweed in Michigan shows or in the Detroit River, but something very strange was going on in this hill. So I shot video of that, and I uploaded it to YouTube and posted it on my Facebook. And during the day yesterday, I received emails and postings from British Columbia, Alberta, Vancouver, Washington State, Northern Germany, and Iowa that people in these regions have all found mutations in dandelions by them in the past week. And when I say mutation, I mean instead of the stem being like a straw, it's like as big as your finger, and instead of having one head, it has 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 heads. So check that video out. I'll put a link into chat. And after I posted that, on the side of YouTube, it'll give you a bunch of related videos. And I found a whole bunch of other ones there, ones that people had posted last summer. I was aware of the ones in Alberta, but not of all the other places. So when we come back, we are going to talk about Ron Wyden and what we can do to spread his word. I'll read part of the letter that he is going to be sending to Hillary Clinton today. You're listening to Nuked Radio. We are back with Nuked Radio. If you guys come across any mutations in dandelions or flowers or plants or later on this summer in your vegetable garden, please consider uploading them to Mutation Watch. I told Loren Murray what we were trying to do, and part of my thought is that when people hear about anything related to nuclear energy, it kind of turns them off because it's a very complicated subject. But when people hear about mutations, they pay attention to that. And we started this page on Facebook called Mutation Watch. I dropped a link into chat. Feel free to upload any pictures that you have or video of things that you're noticing around you. There's a ton of stuff already on there of fruit trees and vegetables, tomatoes especially. I've got a strawberry picture that I need to upload to there too. I have a strawberry with arms in my kitchen. And make sure that you include your name, the date the picture was taken, and your location so that you can receive proper credit if Loren uses this in a research article or in a lecture. So check that page out on Facebook. Now, some of the most hopeful news that I have heard in the past year happened yesterday when Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon put out a press release, and he actually toured Fukushima recently. He is sending a letter to the Ambassador Fujisaki, and he's copying Hillary Clinton and Jasko from the NRC, and I wanted to read some portions of this letter. Having just visited the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station with your government's gracious assistance, I'm writing to convey my deep sympathies to the people of Japan for the enormous tragedy that occurred as a result of the March 11th earthquake and tsunami, as well as my concerns about the risks that continue. The scope of damage to the plants and to the surrounding area was far beyond what I expected, and the scope of the challenges to the utility owner, the government of Japan, and to the people of the region are daunting. The precarious status of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear units and the risk presented by the enormous inventory of radioactive materials and spent fuel in the event of further earthquake threats should be of concern to all and a focus of greater international support and assistance. I will be asking the appropriate agencies in the United States government to assure me that they are making all appropriate resources available to assist the Tokyo Electric Power Company and the Japanese government in these efforts. As a senior member of the United States Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, and as a senator representing a region also vulnerable to tsunamis, I appreciate your help in allowing me to visit the plant in person. As we observed in our travel through the evacuation zone to the nuclear plant, the impacts on the region extend far beyond the plant itself, and it is important to learn whatever lessons can be learned from this event for the future use and development of this energy technology. The damage to the 6 units at the site as a result of a combination of earthquake, tsunami, and resulting hydrogen explosions from the damaged plants have clearly resulted in a very difficult remediation effort. After stabilization of the reactors themselves and control of contaminated water used to cool the reactors and spent fuel pools, efforts to address safe storage of radioactive materials and spent fuel seems paramount. The building that houses 4 of the plant's reactors are only a short distance from the ocean and only about 30 feet above sea level. These buildings, all of which appear to be badly damaged, still contain many spent fuel rods. While it is likely it will take a number of years to fully retrieve the damaged fuel from the reactors themselves, retrieval of spent fuel stored in the facility at Mutsu or a combination of these should be a priority given the possibility of further earthquakes over the several decades of response activities now proposed by TEPCO. Loss of containment in any of these pools, especially the pool at Unit 4, which has the highest inventory of the hottest fuel, could result in an even greater release of radiation than the initial accident. TEPCO's remediation roadmap proposes to take up to 10 years to complete spent fuel removal from all of the pools on the site. Given the compromised nature of these structures due to the events of March 11th, this schedule carries extraordinary and continuing risk if further severe seismic events were to occur. The true earthquake risk for the site was seriously underestimated and remains unresolved. I look forward to hearing from you on what efforts can be made to accelerate this schedule and how the United States can be of assistance to the Japanese. This was one of the best opportunities to get this story in mainstream that I've seen. And we really need to repost this article everywhere. Email it, share it, put it on Facebook, put it on Twitter. We're not going to have continued opportunities to reach a lot of people. And we may not get another chance for a long time. And like Jules and I were talking about in the beginning of the show, we're riding this wave right now of information of people paying attention to this. You know, I mean, this guy sounds horrified, which he should be. You know, we're essentially standing on a precipice of a global extinction event with nothing between us and that spent fuel pool. Now, he's proposing international assistance, which for the life of me, I can't believe hasn't been done already. I know that it was offered at the beginning of the crisis by a few countries, and Japan turned it down. But what I want to promote is awareness to all of the circumstances of Fukushima, including this continued release of radioactivity, which he doesn't mention in this letter. Now, I wrote to him last night at Jules' suggestion. We asked him to come on the show today, and I'm going to write to him again. And anybody who would like to drop him a note to encourage him to keep talking about this. I mean, we've got the attention of a senator now who seems to get it. I want you guys to also feel free to repost anything and everything that we put on the web, on Fukushima Facts, on YouTube, on the Facebook page, you know, the forecasts. In fact, there was a petition someone posted on there last night to get radiation levels on the Weather Channel.
I saw that. I thought you had created that petition.
No,
that was great.
Somebody put it on the Radchick page, and I went and I posted it all over the Weather Channel. I mean, it's really, really unlikely that they'd ever start doing it, but for the other people going to that site, to get them thinking about it and paying attention to it, I'll put the link into chat again, and feel free to share it around. But I was really encouraged when I read that press release yesterday. You know, I mean, hopefully the nuke industry won't get to this guy. in the next couple of weeks. If he keeps talking about this, then we know he's taking it seriously. If all of a sudden we don't hear from him anymore, then somebody probably got to him. There's 75 comments
Or he
under
has
the
a
article.
car accident.
Yeah.
Yes, and make sure that you repost and re-upload Miss Milky the Clown's videos, too. Get those all over.
We post a lot of her stuff on Facebook, too, but you can go right to YouTube and look at her stuff. I'm looking through these comments right now, and I see that the Huffington Post is talking about it, thanks to the people on Any News. And what did you say, the Wall Street Journal wrote something about it today, too?
New York Times, I thought.
And it says right on his webpage.
Oh, no, it is Wall Street Journal. Sorry about that.
Where you contact him that he can only reply if you live in Oregon. So, I mean, I gave him our phone numbers and all our contact information anyway, but, I'd imagine a few people probably want to talk to him today after coming out with that. Rachel Maddow had actually put out last weekend, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, an update on Fukushima where she went through the entire sequence of events to where we are now. And I've been posting my forecasts on her page every time I do one for like the last 4 months, and she blocked me. I can't post on her page anymore.
I think John Connor probably caused some of the blockings with the info jam. She probably saw your name and said, oh no, she's another one of them.
He's doing the info jam with the radiation stuff too?
He did one info jam, yeah. But I know that she's one of his targets.
Well, a lot of people visit her page, for sure. So, and she does occasionally talk about nuke stuff, and so I'd like her to continue talking about it, and I reiterated in an email that I sent to her that we need to have every weather forecaster in the country doing these forecasts as long as the situation is going on. So take advantage of this wave that we are riding and get the word out in any way that you can. We'll be back on Thursday, same time. Thanks, Jules. Thanks, Kurt.
Thanks, Christina.
Everyone take care and stay safe, and we'll see you Thursday.